At the same time, Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille says the declaration has paved the way to foster a more sustainable and resilient tourism sector.
In the tourism sector, we have not only just agreed on a declaration, but we've also designed an action plan for implementation. On the South African side, the visa reform, we've done that. We've come with the electronic travel authorization, a big enabler. That immediately opened up the market of India, China, Indonesia, and Mexico. So I said to the private sector, are we ready for the influx?
Well, let's turn our attention to the local level now and how this municipality of Johannesburg has handled the G20. The mayor, Dr Morero, hailing the summit a victory for the African continent.
From a logistic point of view, where there is traffic management, movement of heads of states, delegates from the hotels into the venue, and everywhere else, I think it has been very smooth. The content of the conference in terms of the declaration itself, I think it puts Africa at a better position to advance on issues that have been affecting the continent, whether on climate change, on debt reform, which in particular debt reform, I think it's a matter that African governments we should take it forward to ensure that we can achieve what we want to achieve in terms of debt reform. So it's a critical area for our survival and growth.
Morero says the city has the capacity to turn around.
My work was to ensure that I deal with constraints within the management teams, to ensure that I unblock what has been making them not to move as managers, as leaders. Because part of the problem, I've always said it's a management issue. So deal with that, correct that, and that is why we're beginning to see results. Political stability, ensure at the level of your mayoral committee, you've got stability and all of us are focused on one objective, on one job. And that is why we are seeing the results now. It took a long time, from November to around June, where to set up the systems. And now we are seeing the results that we want. They're not really where we still want them to be. There's still issues that I still have to address internally to get management and supervision to happen.
Atlantic Council's Africa Centre's Colin Coleman says the declaration is a partial victory for South Africa, but not a complete victory for the continent.
I can't overemphasize enough the victory represented by the adoption of the Leaders' Declaration in the face of pressure and resistance from some. This declaration is broadly positive for Africa's place in the world if you read through the 30 pages. And therefore, one would have hoped to see some commitments to reducing the amount of debt. There's about $3 trillion of GDP in Africa and 54% debt to GDP. And the interest payments, as per the expert panel led by Trevor Manuel, is crowding out these human development expenditures and investments. And we need to see a commitment by the world, if not now, in the short term, to reducing this debt pile to give breathing space to Africa. I must say the zero commitments in quantum to mobilize a vehicle to reduce African debt was a disappointment.
Spogaze Xuma and Blessing Khoza is under investigation after her older sister, Nkosazana Zuma Ncube, filed an affidavit at the Sandton police station. Zuma Ncube has accused the trio of luring 17 South African men to Russia under false pretenses. She claims they handed them over to a Russian mercenary group to fight in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine without their knowledge or consent. National Police spokesperson Athlenda Mate says an inquiry docket has been opened.
We can confirm that Ms. Nkosazana Bonganini Zuma Ncube deposed an affidavit at the Center Police Station on the 22nd of November, just after 6:30, for police to investigate Ms. Duduzile Zuma, Ms. Sipokazi Kluma, and Mr. Blessing Khosa. This is in relation to 17 South African men who are allegedly trapped in the Ukraine-Russian war. Ms. Ncube claims the men were led to Russia under false pretenses and handed to a Russian mercenary group to fight in the Ukrainian war without their knowledge or consent. The SAPS confirms that an inquiry docket has been registered, since the charges are still to be determined through a thorough investigation. The inquiry docket will be investigated at a provincial level.
We have registered an inquiry docket. We can confirm that the docket has been transferred to the Hawks, in which a unit called Crimes Against the State will now investigate the matter. It is quite a serious and complex matter because it is transnational in nature. We are yet to interview the victims, the alleged victims, to find out if they were really lured under false pretenses and so on. So the matter is under investigation, and for now we cannot say much, but to say that we are yet to interview the victims, but we are working on it.
Still ahead on News at Prime, well, the G20 Summit has concluded, and after the break, we're going to look at the way forward ahead of the United States presidency. To help us do that, University of Johannesburg's Dr Oscar van Heerden is my guest. She's going to talk to us about how he sees this summit. How did South Africa do? This was the moment for the country and the continent at large to shine. All right, that conversation next. Dr. van Heerden?
Yes, Polly.
Good evening, sir. Good to
Good evening.
have you with me. Good to have you with me. I hope you're at home now.
No, I'm still here, unfortunately.
Nazareth? Gee whiz.
Yes.
Okay.
I leave after this interview.
Okay. All right. I'll try and make it painless.
Okay.
Watching News at Prime. All right, let's continue with our coverage on Africa's first G20 summit that wrapped up today. President Cyril Ramaphosa hailing the advancement of the continent's development on the meeting's agenda. He says the newly adopted G20 declaration signals a united resolve to push forward practical global solutions through strengthened multilateral cooperation. For analysis on how the summit has gone and, importantly, the latest diplomatic spat between South Africa and the United States, we'll see how that plays out. I'm joined by international relations expert. He is attached to the University of Johannesburg, Dr Oscar van Heerden. He's my guest. Dr van Heerden, good to have you. I understand you're still in Nasrec, and so you haven't quite closed the chapter. Some key milestones have been achieved out of this summit. What stands out for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think first and foremost, we need to give praise and congratulate the South African government for hosting a very successful group of 20 meeting summit. From a logistical point of view, you know, people don't often realize what it takes to host such a massive undertaking. More than 42 countries that was here. You know, they all had to arrive on time. It had to be sequenced between Waterkloof and OR Tambo. And then, of course, there's the hotels, the hospitality, and the logistics here at Nasrec. So a big feather in the cap of the South African government, the presidency, Ramaphosa, and of course, DIRCO, Minister Lamola, for pulling it off. And you know what, the thing that was the most interesting was that even before, literally before we got started on Saturday, before lunchtime, the Leaders' Declaration was already signed and sealed. So it was already starting on a positive note. We all thought we would have to wait till Sunday towards the end, but no, the Sherpas did a fantastic job. They crossed the T's, dot the I's, and everyone agreed.
Dr. van Heerden, so the one word that seems to come out very strongly, I listened to our international relations minister, Ronald Lamola, and multilateralism appears front and center of everything he speaks about. You look at the importance of ensuring that debt restructuring, particularly for countries on the continent of Africa, that is dealt with speed. At least these are the commitments coming out of this summit. I look at those as some of the key milestones. For you, am I overemphasizing the matter around multilateralism, just as Ronald Lamola is? And if so, what do we foresee the next presidency doing around these matters? Are they just going to, you know, push them aside and place on the agenda something completely different? Is that possible, given that this G20 has had, I think, 4 years before coming to South Africa, and it has been countries on the global south that have really set the agenda? Is it going to be really that easy to push all of these resolutions aside?
No, you're absolutely right, Cody. The key word was indeed multilateralism from the very beginning, from the get-go. With President Ramaphosa's opening remarks, the sentence that really stood out was the fact that he said multilateralism can and does work, full stop. And I think he was speaking directly to those that still think that the current world order is surrounding individualism, one country that can solve the problems and so forth. And you get that trend that has been going throughout the entire 2 days. Every leader that had an opportunity to speak referenced this point. The chancellor from Germany said, we can only do it together. We are here to stay. The president of Turkey, also Erdogan, said, we can only work together. He has been having a good time in terms of working with President Ramaphosa and others. Modi said the same thing last night when there was the Indian reception, that they've been working together multilaterally together. So the message is clear. If you want to solve the world's problems, if you want to look at how do we address issues of the global south and Africa and the global north, then it has to be done together. in multilateralism. And unfortunately, to come to your point, Collie, next year, you are dealing with a country that is completely anti-multilateralism. I mean, the Trump administration has withdrawn from the World Health Organization, has withdrawn from UNESCO, is sanctioning the International Court of Justice, is now boycotting the Group of 20. We see a country that is not okay, with multilateralism. And so I don't know how the US is going to deal with it next year, but it's not possible to just push things aside. Of all the issues that have come over the last 4 years, it's going to make for interesting politics, geopolitics.
Yeah. You mentioned the German Chancellor, and I'm suddenly reminded that South Africa was hosting the G20. It's the group of 20 countries. And included in there are the two regional bodies, the EU and the African Union. You then have a smaller group. It's called the G7. Germany forms part of that, Italy. A large majority of these G7 leaders were actually in South Africa, almost as a show of support for President Ramaphosa. Do you think that that is going to send some message to President Trump, who I suspect he may have wanted for this summit to not really succeed? And unfortunately for him, success is all we're talking about this time around.
Yes, Collie. You know, the truth is that Donald Trump bluffed. Ramaphosa called his bluff. And I think the bluff that he called, he thought, as you rightfully point out, he thought that the G7 members were going to also follow his lead and boycott the G20 gathering. But that did not happen. It did not happen. The G7, the remaining G7 leaders, all of them which are here. Japan, Italy, France, Germany, the UK, they're all here. And it sends a very powerful message for two reasons. The one that we've just talked about, which is the future of multilateralism, but also two, that they are not in agreement with what Trump is saying. They are not in agreement. You know, Trump might want to believe the lies and the untruths and the falsehoods that he's peddling in terms of white genocide, in terms of murders of white farmers, land grabs, and all of these untruths and lies. But the G7 leaders and the remaining Group 20 leaders don't believe it. They know what's the truth. It has been widely debunked. And so Trump stands alone.
Let's close the conversation, Dr. van Heerden, but I want to quote President Ramaphosa directly right at the end of his speech at the closure of this summit. And I quote, "I now say that this gavel of the G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year." I want to leave it there. Do you believe in your heart of hearts that South Africa will definitely be in the United States based on the behavior of that country's leader?
I think Trump is going to do everything in his powers to make sure that South Africa is not in the US and Miami. I think he's going to throw his toys out of the cot. Visas will be cancelled. They are going to have no regard for diplomatic passports. But he's going to be given a moment of reflection, a moment of pause by the likes of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, who's taking the gavel over as in 2027. I think that BRICS members who are partners of South Africa are also going to give him a moment of pause, because they themselves are going to potentially have a say as to whether they will attend if indeed there's an overt attempt to exclude South Africa from next year. And I do think that people around Trump is going to say that would be a very, very silly diplomatic move.